Okay, this is unprecedented for yours truly. This is the book that I'm currently reading. I'm on page 62. But it's so good. I want to start this book review with you early. It's one of my favorite authors, Cindy Kirk, Claiming the Rancher's Heart from the Western Heart series in Harlequin. And how do I know it's the Western Heart series? You look at the spine. Anyway, I want to share the first 28 pages with you because it's that good. I don't know, outside of that, what I'll share with you about this book, but I want to wet your whistle, so to speak, so it makes you pick up this book and want to read it as well. There's a whole herd of them. Stacy Summers stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and stared. Since arriving in Sweetwater, Montana 2 weeks ago, she'd seen an occasional cowboy, but never so many, and never clustered together. What's the occasion? Anna Anderson, Stacy's friend and Sweet River native, came to a halt beside her. What day is it? Wednesday, Stacy answered. June 2nd, Lauren Van Mereven replied. The doctoral student had seemed lost in thought since 3 roommates had left Sharon's Food Mart, but now, standing beside Stacy in a bright sunlight, she couldn't have been more focused. That was page 7 and 8. Though Lauren would normally be the first to say that staring was rude, she watched the cowboys pile out of the Coffee Pot Cafe with undisguised interest. Wednesday, June 2nd, Anna repeated. Her blue eyes narrowed in thought as she pulled a key fob from her pocket and unlocked the Jeep parked at the curb. Stacy shifted the heavy sack of groceries to the other arm and opened the back, dropped the bag inside. Bingo! Anna announced with a decisive nod. They were playing bingo. It seemed rather odd to Stacy that a group of men would gather on a Wednesday morning to play a game, but she quickly discovered that Sweet River was in its own world. No, silly, Anna giggled. The Cattlemen's Association meets the first Wednesday of every month. While that made more sense than bingo, Stacy wondered what issues such an organization would address. Ann Arbor, Michigan, where she'd grown up, was hardly a cattleman's paradise, and in the 10 years she resided in Denver, not a single cowboy even crossed her path. This is page 9. When Lauren had proposed moving to Anna's hometown to research the male-female compatibility for her dissertation, Stacy had tagged along. The search for the perfect job, her bliss as she liked to call it, wasn't going well, and for a change of scenery seemed a good idea. For some reason, she thought Sweet River would be like Aspen, one of her favorite towns. She expected cute, trendy shops and a plethora of doctors, lawyers, businessmen who enjoyed the great outdoors. Boy, she had been wrong. I've never seen so many guys in boots and hats. They were big men with broad shoulders, weathered skin, hair that she'd never seen a stylist touch, confident men who worked hard and lived on their own terms, men who would expect a wife to give up her dreams for life on a ranch. Though the air outside was warm, Stacy shivered. Lauren's eyes looked on a distance, almost dreamy. Do you know the first cowboys came from Mexico? They were known as vaqueros, the Spanish word for cowboys. That's page 10. Stacy shot a pleading look in Anna's direction. They needed to stop Lauren before she got rolling. If not, they'd be forced to endure a lecture of history of the modern cowboy all the way home. Get in, Lauren. Anna gestured to the Jeep. We don't want the rocky road to melt. Though Anna had injected a nice bit of urgency in her voice, Lauren's gaze remained riveted on the men, dressed in jeans and t-shirt and boots, talking and laughing in deep, manly voices. One guy captured Stacy's attention with a jeans, cowboy hat, and sun-bronzed skin. He looked like all the others, yet her gaze had been immediately drawn to him. It must have been because he was talking to Anna's brother Seth. There could be no other explanation. A testosterone-rich male had never made it onto her radar before. She liked her men, more artsy, preferring the starving poet look over a bulky linebacker any day. You know, Stace, Lauren tapped a finger against her lips, something tells me there just might be a cowboy in your future. Page 11. Lauren's research involved identifying compatible couples, and Stacy and was Lauren's first guinea pig, or as she liked to refer to it, research subject. A knot formed in the pit of Stacy's stomach at the thought of being paired with a ropin', ridin', manly man. She sent up a quick prayer of heavenward, Dear God, please, anyone but a cowboy. A few weeks later, Stacy dropped into the high-backed wicker chair on Anna's porch, braced for battle. When Lauren had arrived from home after an afternoon run, Stacy had told her that they needed to talk. She stewed in silence about the prospect of Lauren's proposed match for her long enough. While she knew it was important for Lauren's research that she at least meet this guy, it seemed wrong to waste time. And hers. Stacy was formulating the "I'm not interested in a cowboy" speech for Lauren when a cool breeze from the crazy mountain ruffled the picture in her hand. She lifted her face, reveling in the feel of the mountain air against her cheek. Even after 4 weeks in Big Sky country, Stacy still found herself awed by the beauty that surrounded her. Page 12. She glanced over at the large front yard. Everywhere she looked, the land was lush and green, and the flowers? June had barely started, and the bluebells, beargrass, and Indian paintbrush were already in richest bloom. The screen door clattered and shut. Lauren crossed the porch, claiming the chair opposite Stacy. "What's up?" Stacy pulled her gaze from the breathtaking scenery to focus on Lauren. "Your computer hiccuped. It's the only explanation." Stacy lifted the picture. "Does he look like my type?" "If you're talking about Josh Collins, he's a nice guy." Anna stepped onto the wraparound porch of the large 2-story house and let the door fall shut behind her. "I've known him since grade school. He and my brother Seth are best friends." Stacy stared in dismay at teetering tray of drinks. Anna was tempting to balance. Lauren, who was the closest, jumped up and took the tray with a pitcher of lemonade and 3 crystal glasses from the perky blonde. "You're going to fall and break your neck wearing those shoes." "Ask me if I care." Anna's gaze dropped to the lime green pointy-toed stilettos. "They are so me." Page 13. "They are cute," Lauren conceded, her head cocked to one side. "I wonder if they'd fit me. You and I wear the same size." "Hello!" Stacy lifted a hand and waved it wildly. "Remember me? The one facing a date with Mr. Wrong at any minute?" "Calm down." Lauren poured a glass of lemonade, handed it to Stacy, and sat down with a gracefulness Stacy envied. "I don't make mistakes. If you recall, I gave you a summary of results. Unless you lied on your survey or he lied on his, you and Josh Collins are very much compatible." She wanted to believe her friend. After all, her first match with Sweet River attorney Alexander Darst had been pleasant. Unfortunately, there had been no spark. Stacy lifted the picture of the rugged rancher and studied it again. Even if he hadn't been on a horse, even if she hadn't seen him talking with Seth after the Cattlemen's Association meeting, his hat and boots confirmed her theory about a computer malfunction. Page 14. A match between a city girl and a rancher made no sense. Everyone knew that city and country were like oil and water. They just didn't mix. Sadly, for all her jokes about the process, she was disappointed. She hoped to find a summer companion, a Renaissance man who had shared her love of cooking and the arts. "He's a cowboy, Lauren." Stacy's voice, despite her efforts to control it. "A cowboy." "You got something against cowboys?" The deep, sexy voice coming from the front of the steps sent a jolt through Stacy. She dropped the pitcher to the table, and turned in her seat and met an unblinking, blue-eyed gaze. It was him. She had to admit that he looked even better up close. He wore a chambray shirt that made his eyes look strikingly blue, and a pair of jeans that hugged his long legs. There was no hat, just lots of thick, dark hair brushing his collar. He continued to lazily appraise her. The glint in his eyes told her that he knew she'd put herself in a hole and she was desperately searching for a way to shovel out. Trouble was, she couldn't count on Lauren, who appeared to be fighting a laugh. Anna just stared expectantly of her, offering no assistance at all. "Of course I like cowboys," Stacy said, feeling an urgent need to the silence that seemed to go on for hours but lasted only a few seconds. "Cowboys make the world go round." His smile widened to a grin, and Lauren laughed aloud. Stacy shot her a censuring look. Granted, her response might not have been the best, but it could have been worse. She'd been caught off guard, startled, distracted by his eyes and his timing. Why, oh why hadn't she kept her mouth shut? "Well, I can't say I recall ever hearing that saying before," he said smoothly, "but it's definitely true." Okay, so he was gracious, and a quality lacking in most men she dated, and one she greatly admired. It was too bad he was not only a cowboy, but was also so big. He had to be at least 6'2", with broad shoulders and a muscular build. Rugged, manly. A dreamboat to many, but not her type at all. This is 14 and 15. Still, when those laughing blue eyes once again settled on her, she shivered. There was a keen intelligence in liquid depths, and he exuded a self-confidence that she found appealing. This cowboy was nobody's fool. Stacy opened her mouth to ask if he wanted a beer. He didn't even look at the lemonade. He didn't look like a lemonade guy, but Anna spoke first. "It's good to see you." Anna crossed the porch, her heels clacking loudly. When she reached Josh, she wrapped her arms around him. "Thank you for filling out the survey." Josh smiled and gave her a hug and a hair tug. "Anything for you, Anna Banana." Stacy exchanged a glance with Lauren. "Anna Banana?" Lauren's lips twitched. "You never told us you had a nickname." "Seth gave it to me when I was small," Anna explained before shifting her attention back to Josh. She wagged a finger at him. "You were supposed to forget that name." "I have a good memory." Stacy could see the twinkle in his eyes. "I have a good memory as well," Anna teased. "I remember Seth telling me that you and he preferred that traditional dating route. Yet you both filled out Lauren's survey. Why?" There was a warm, comfortable feel to the interaction between the two. Stacy found herself wondering if Josh and Anna had ever dated. A stab of something she couldn't quite identify rose up at that thought. It was almost as if she were jealous. But that would be crazy. She wasn't interested in Josh Collins, the cowboy extraordinaire. "Seth probably did it because he knew you'd kill him if he didn't," Josh explained. "I completed the survey because Seth asked and I owed him a favor." He shoved his hands into his pockets and rocked back on his heels. "I never expected to get matched." "He's no more excited about this date than I am," Stacy thought, pushing her chair and rising, finding the thought more comforting than disturbing. "I'll try to make the evening as painless as possible." Stacy covered the short distance separating them and held out her hand. "I'm Stacy Summers, your date." "I figured as much." He pulled a hand from his pocket and his fingers covered hers in a warm, firm grip. "Josh Collins." To Stacy's surprise, a tingle traveled up her arm. She slipped her hand from his, puzzled by the reaction. The cute attorney's hand had brushed against hers several times during their date, and she hasn't felt a single sizzle. That was 16 and 17. Here comes 18 and 19. "Would you care to join us?" Anna asked. "We have fresh squeezed lemonade, and I could bring out sugar cookies Stacy made this morning." His easy smile didn't waver, but something told Stacy he'd rather break a bronc than drink lemonade and eat cookies with 3 women. Though several minutes earlier she'd been determined to do whatever it took to cut this date short, she found herself coming to his rescue. "Sorry, Anna, Josh agreed to a date with 1 woman, not 3. Lauren rose and stepped forward. "Well, before my roommate steals you away, let me introduce myself. I'm Lauren Van Meveren, the author of the survey you took. I also want to extend my thanks for you participating." "Pleased to meet you, Lauren." Josh shook her hand. "Those were some mighty interesting questions." Stacy exchanged a glance with Anna. Obviously, Josh didn't realize he was in danger of opening floodgates. If there was one thing about Lauren, she was passionate, and it was about her research. "I'm working on a doctoral dissertation." Lauren's face lit up the way it always did when anyone expressed interest in her research. "The survey is a tool to gather data that will either support or disapprove my research hypothesis." "Seth mentioned you were working on your PhD," Josh said, "but when I asked what your research question was, he couldn't tell me." Stacy stifled a groan. The floodgates were now officially open. Lauren straightened. "You're familiar with the dissertation process?" "Somewhat," he admitted. "My mother is working on her PhD in nursing. I remember that when she went through it to get her topic approved." "Then you do understand." Lauren gestured to the wicker chair next to hers. "Have a seat. I'll tell you about my hypothesis." "I suggest we all sit down," Anna said with a smile. "This may take a while," she added in a low tone, only loud enough for Stacy to hear. Stacy slipped back into the chair she vacated moments before. Josh snagged the seat beside her, his attention focused on Lauren. Even if Stacy wanted to save him, it was too late now. That's 18 and 19. Here comes 20, 21. Lauren's lips tipped up in a satisfied smile. "I was ecstatic when my subject was approved." "And what are you studying?" Josh prompted. "Shoot me now," Stacy thought to herself. "Just put a gun to my head and shoot me." Having relevant, personally tailored information about values and characteristics central to the interpersonal relationships increases the chance of a successful establishment and maintenance of said relationships, Lauren said without taking a breath. "It's a concept already embraced by many of online dating services, but my study focuses more on what goes into forming a friendship rather than just a love match." Very interesting, Josh said, sounding surprising sincere. What made you decide to do the research here? Anna suggested I consider it. I told her about all the single men. Anna poured a glass of lemonade and handed it to Josh, and that I had a house where she could stay rent free, so I decided to come along since there was nothing to keep me in Denver. Josh shifted his attention to Anna. Seth mentioned you lost your job. My employer was supposed to sell me her boutique. Anna took the last seat at the table. Instead, she sold it to someone else. Josh shook his head, sympathy in his eyes. That sucks. Tell me about it, Anna said with a sigh. The handsome cowboy seemed to be getting along so well with her roommates that Stacy wondered if anyone would notice if she got up and left. When her gaze returned to the table, she found Josh staring. It's been great catching up. He drained the glass of lemonade, but Stacy and I should get going. He stood, and Stacy automatically rose to her feet. She adored her roommates, but going with her match seemed a better option than staying and talking research with Lauren or rehashing job disappointments with Anna. Josh followed her steps, and though he'd already given her a quick once-over when he first arrived, she caught him casting a impetuous glances at her way. If the look in his eyes was any indication, her khaki capris and pink cotton shirt met with his approval. Stacy felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease, and Anna said he was a nice guy, and his interactions with her roommates had shown to be true. That was 2021. Here comes 22 and 23. There was certainly no need to be stressed, but when she started chatting about the weather, Stacy realized her nerves were on high alert. But if Josh found the topic dull, he didn't show it. In fact, he seemed more than willing to talk about the lack of rain the area had been experiencing. He just started telling her about a particularly bad forest fire near the big timbers a couple of years earlier when they reached his black 4x4. He reached around to open her door, and when she stepped forward, he offered a hand up to the vehicle. Thank you, Josh. My pleasure, he had coupled the words with as an easy smile. Her heart skipped a beat. She didn't know why. She was so charmed. Maybe it was because Mr. Sweet River attorney had gotten an F in the manners department. He hadn't opened a single door for her or even asked what movie she wanted to see. Instead, they watched an action flick he'd chosen. Josh, on the other hand, not only opened the door without being asked, but he waited until she settled inside the truck before shutting the door and rounding the front of the vehicle. She watched him through the window, admiring his sure, purposeful stride. The cowboy exhibited a confidence that many women would find appealing. But as he slid into the driver's seat, her attention was drawn to the rifle hanging in the window behind her head. Her earlier reservations flooded back. But how would she tell this nice guy that he wasn't her type? I can't get used to how flat the streets are, she said, buying herself some time. When Anna talked about her hometown, I pictured a town high in the mountains, not one in a valley. It can be disappointing when things aren't what we expect, he said in an even tone. Not always. Stacy's gaze met his. The unexpected can often be a pleasant surprise. They drove in a silence for several seconds. Did you know that I'm psychic? She shifted in her seat to face him. You are? My powers, he continued, are sending me a strong message. What's the message? Stacy didn't know how much paranormal stuff, but she was curious. What are your powers telling you? You really want to know? Josh's blue eyes looked almost black in the shadows of the truck's cab. Absolutely, Stacy said. He stared unblinking. They're telling me that you don't want to be doing this. Stacy stilled, and for just a moment she forgot how to breathe. She adjusted her seatbelt, not wanting to be rude but to agree, but hating to lie. What makes you say that? For starters, what you said about cowboys. His smile took off any censure from the words. That coupled with the look in your eye when you first saw me. Though he gave no indication she hurt his feelings, she knew that she had, and her heart twisted at that realization. You seem very nice, she said softly. It's just that I've always been attracted to a different kind of man. His dark brows pulled together, and she could see the puzzlement in his eyes. There's more than one kind? You know, she stumbled over her words as she tried to explain. Guys who like to shop and go to the theater, metrosexual kind of guy. You like feminine men? She laughed at the shock he tried so hard to hide. Not feminine, just more sensitive. And cowboys aren't sensitive. No, they aren't, Stacy said immediately. Are they? Not really. Josh lifted a shoulder. Not the ones that I know anyway. That's what I thought, Stacy said with a sigh, wondering why she felt so disappointed when the answer was just what she expected. So what you're saying is This match stands no chance of success, Josh said. Stacy hesitated. To be fair, she should give him a shot, but wouldn't that only postpone the inevitable? Still, there was something about this cowboy. Cowboy. The word hit her like a splash of cold water. No chance, Stacy said firmly. Josh's gaze searched her face, and she could feel her cheeks heat beneath the probing glance. I appreciate the honesty, he said at last, his face showing no emotion. For a second there I thought you might disagree. Crazy, huh? For a second she had been tempted to argue, until she'd come to her senses. Josh might be gentlemanly and have the bluest eyes she'd ever seen, but she could tell that they were too different. That doesn't mean we can't be friends, Stacy said. Of course you probably have plenty of friends. 24, 25, 26. None as pretty as you, he said. He cleared his throat and slowed the truck to a crawl as they entered the business district. If you're hungry, we can grab a bite to eat, or I can show you the sights and give you some Sweetwater history. Sweet River. Sorry, I keep saying water. Stacy pondered the option. She wasn't in the mood to return to the house or to eat. Though Anna had given both her and Lauren a tour when they first moved to Sweet River, she didn't remember much of the town's history. Or I can take you home, he added. Not home. She immediately dismissed that option since they cleared the air. There was no reason they couldn't enjoy the evening. How about you do the tour guide thing, and then if we feel like it, we can eat. Tour guide it is. They cruised slowly through the small business district with the windows down. She learned the corner restaurant had once been a bank, and that the food mart had been resurrected by a woman who moved back to Sweetwater after her husband died. He gave an interesting, informative travelogue, intersped with touches of humor and stories from the past. And then Pastor Barbie told Anna he didn't care if she dressed it like a baby. She couldn't bring a lamb to church. Laughter bubbled up inside Stacy and spilled from her lips. I can't believe Anna had a lamb for a pet. She couldn't keep a touch of envy from her voice. My parents wouldn't even let me have a dog. He looked at her in surprise. You like dogs? I love 'em. Me too, he chuckled. I better. I got 7. Stacy raised a brow. 7? Yep. She marveled that he could look so serious when telling such a tall tale. Wow, we have so much in common. Stacy deliberately widened her eyes. You have 7 dogs, and I have 7 pink ostriches. Josh cast her a startled glance. I'm serious. Yeah, right. Okay, 1 dog, 6 pups, he clarified. Bert, my blue heeler, had puppies 8 weeks ago. He seemed sincere, but something still wasn't making sense. Did you say Bert had puppies? 26, 27. Here's the final page for tonight. Her given name is Bertie. The look on his face told her what he thought of that name. My mother chose it because Bert loves to chase anything with wings. Stacy laughed. I bet they're cute. The puppies, I mean. Want to see 'em? She straightened herself in a seat. Could I? If you don't mind a road trip, he said in a casual tone. My ranch is 40 miles from here. He was letting her know that if she agreed, they'd be spending the rest of the day together, and he was giving her an out. But Stacy didn't hesitate. She adored puppies, and she was enjoying her time with Josh. It's a beautiful day, Stacy said, not even glancing at the sky. Perfect for a drive. Don't give me that, he said with a smile returning to his face. I've got your number. You don't care about the drive or the weather. This is all about the dogs. Nuh-uh. Stacy tried to keep a straight face but couldn't keep from laughing. He did have her number, and she hoped this was all about the dogs, because if it wasn't, she was in big trouble. And that was page 28. And so far, this book has been entertaining, charming, and a delight. So we'll see what happens. I will tell you I'm on page 62, and you've got to stay tuned to see if I read any more of this book for you and if I get you a book rating this week. So don't go nowhere.